Welcome to the Social Services Information System 22.3 release training. My name is Ross Stack. My pronouns are he, him, his. I work for the Department of Human Services as an e-learning instructional designer developer in the Business Operations Learning and Development Unit. I have a few colleagues on with me today helping us present. Sarah Knopf, Business Operations Learning and Development Unit Supervisor. Marcia Riss, Business Operations Help Desk Unit Worker, Subject Matter Expert. Renetta Walk, Business Operations Learning and Development Unit Trainer. And Molly Kaler, Fiscal Subject Matter Expert from our Business Operations Help Desk Unit. Other staff assisting today, Erica Jepson. She's a worker subject matter expert from the Business Operations Help Desk Unit, and she'll be monitoring the Q&A section and answering questions as needed. Just a quick reminder, we are recording today's release training, and the PowerPoint for today's training will be coming shortly to you. We have an hour to share a lot of content today. So I have a couple of housekeeping items. Use the chat window to contact Heidi Morris if you need technical assistance only. And type your questions in the Q&A window. We will answer questions after each section. Today's release training will cover the following functionality changes: architecture, new editor; children's mental health; documents; fiscal; permanency; security; service plans; statewide case access; my personal favorite, additional topics; adult protection; and resources. We will start with architecture and the editor. Leading the conversation is Marcia Riss, one of our team's business operations worker subject matter experts. Welcome, Marcia.
Great, thanks, Ross. All right, so the expanded editor, which is accessed when workers click on the blue E icon within intakes, maltreatment reports, and notes, so including activities, contacts, case notes, it was replaced by a new RTF editor. So this was done to help resolve some of the frustrating SSIS related defects that had included some workers were intermittently losing text when using the expanded editor. Also, we believe that it was related to or contributing to various print problems within the editor as well. So this has been changed. If you want to go to the next slide there, Renetta, thank you. So to resolve the issues that had been frustrating workers that were using the editor is now significantly simplified and should resolve the various issues that the workers had been experiencing within the expanded editor. Some changes that you're going to see with the new expanded editor include when the screen is in, oops, you can go back. Sorry, thank you. When the screen is in a read-only state, users will need to double click on the blue E to open and edit in the editor. The ribbon for the editor looks different and has fewer formatting options available, and a new save button is available, as well as a new save prompt that will show upon leaving the expanded editor. So we're going to take a look at a few of these. Thank you. If you open a screen and have yet to click in the editor to enter edit mode, then clicking on the blue E, so you can see that on the screen there, the blue E icon, will require a double click. So this is a change. One click is to enter edit mode, and the next is to open the editor screen. So it doesn't always happen where you have to do a double click. Sometimes you're going to find it's only one click if you're already in edit mode. If you can go to the next slide, Renetta, I'll show you. So here's an example of the note within the unexpanded editor that's not yet in edit mode. So it looks just like a regular note, right? But you can tell if a note or an item in the unexpanded editor is read-only when the majority of fields that are usually editable are still grayed out. It's not in edit mode yet then. So if it's still grayed out, it means if I want to click directly on that blue E, I'm going to have to double click. again, one click to open edit mode and the next click to actually open the editor. If I had already been editing within that screen, then I'll just have to click on that blue E once. So just FYI, it doesn't open immediately, just click it twice, it will open up the editor, okay? Next slide. So this slide has an image of the new editor's home tab. So you'll notice it's a little bit smaller. It doesn't have as many tabs now within the expanded editor as you're used to seeing. But the expanded editor ribbon is now quite simplified. There's less tabs and overall options, but the primary items that are needed for entering, saving, and formatting text have remained the same. So the home tab now includes a save button. So there's no save as to save to like a network drive, but that could still be done using one of the print or print to file options from the unexpanded editor. So before you go into the expanded editor, you still have that option. But the home tab does have the save button again. So the print option has been removed from the expanded editor. However, just as I noted, items can still be printed using the unexpanded editor print options, such as when you can print a screen, print summary for chronology, notes, various reports that include the description of needs, such as in intakes, child maltreatment reports, adult maltreatment reports, those types of things. So those are still available. And workers can use the new zoom in and zoom out to expand and minimize the view of the document and text. So you can see those that zoom in and zoom out right there in the home tab. Next slide, please. So here we show the new editor's formatting tab and the options available there. The formatting tab includes the most basic items necessary for formatting entered text when a worker wants to go beyond the default text settings. So the default font is going to be Arial 12-point font in both the unexpanded and the expanded editors. However, those can be adjusted. Additional options on the formatting tab include spell check, bullets and numbering, alignment options, paragraph, show formatting options, which is helpful when you're trying to like problem solve issues. Why are things looking a certain way? As well as the symbol button, which is used for various symbols, accent characters that may not be found on standard keyboards. Next slide. Oh, I see you're there. Right-clicking on the text still brings up a right-click menu. So when you're in the expanded editor, you're starting to type, you want to right-click on some of that font, you still have that right-click menu, which has been simplified again to include cut, copy, paste, increase and decrease indents, as well as the font menu button is also available here, just like it was on our last screen on the ribbon, and a couple other options, including the hyperlink option. Next slide, thank you. So clicking on the font button in the upper left corner of the formatting tab, or if you were to right click on the text entered within the screen and using that right click menu to get to the font option, those are going to bring up a pretty standard font option window. So similar to what you're going to see like in Microsoft Word, which we're mostly familiar with, workers can adjust the font and font style and size, adjust color, use various effects such as strike through, all caps, etc. As well as see a preview of what their chosen font will look like. So you still have all these options available. Next slide. So another piece, another new function to the expanded editor is going to include a new save prompt. So the prompt appears when a worker goes to exit the editor using the X in the upper right corner without first saving any entered text on the expanded editor screen. So if you haven't entered any text on the expanded editor screen and you go to close it, it's not going to prompt you. However, if you've changed something, you went into edit mode on the expanded editor screen, you started doing something, the prompt is going to come up when you go to close it if you haven't first saved, and it's going to say changes have been made to the note, save changes. So asking you if you want to continue and save changes, yes or no. So choosing no will bring the user back to the unexpanded editor box, having not saved the text that was added within the expanded editor. So pay attention to this prompt, right? It's giving you that second chance. Choosing yes will save and bring the user back to the unexpanded editor box with now the newly added text showing there also. So for those of us that sometimes kind of get in a groove, are flying through things, not necessarily ensuring that we're clicking save before we're closing that screen, this prompt should slow the user down just a moment and give them another chance to choose to save their work if they're wanting to do that. And next slide. So a reminder, so this isn't really a huge change here, but I think it's a timely reminder since we're talking about the editor and what should be being put in the text boxes. So images are not and have not been supported in SSIS text and the expanded editor, and the expanded editor views. So while SSIS may currently still allow you to copy and paste an image into the unexpanded editor, so before you go into the blue E, it still allows you to. Really, we'd rather it not. They are not, the images are not and have not been supported by SSIS. So we still recommend workers do not copy and paste images into the unexpanded editor on these screens. They will not appear when you're trying to print or you're trying to email. So say you're trying to send things off for like a county attorney, for court kinds of things. Those images are not there. So you don't want to rely on that to be the place to save your images. And often they don't appear later when you go back to look at those notes. So down the road, we really don't want you to rely on that. You shouldn't be adding those. To help avoid users entering images, when we worked on the, I can't speak today, sorry. When we work on the expanded editor changes, we made the changes so that images cannot be added in the expanded editor. So the expanded editor and the unexpanded editor are really separate in functionality. So we weren't able to make that change in the unexpanded editor at the same time. But we still want to make sure users are aware that they really shouldn't be adding images to either. Images can be added as attached file under chronology when needed within SSIS. So please keep that in mind. Don't rely on these text boxes to save your images. Okay, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about general reports and that time to initial contact with victim report. So this was modified to track and show when a 24-hour required response has been overridden. Users may now use that new column, the timeline override, to display the information. So tomorrow, after you have your release of the new release, tomorrow you'll see a new column that's available, and it's called that timeline override column. And next slide, let's take a look at what that looks like. Thank you. So this slide shows a screenshot of the time to initial contact with victims grid, highlighting the timeline override option and how that column displays in the grid when selected. So remember, this is a grid type report, which means you can use that column chooser button, which is that tiny little button in the top left of the header row. So you can see that I have it circled there on the screenshot. So you can use that to be able to pull in various or remove, add or remove various columns, including this new column. So there's the new column is called timeline override. It's available to add to the grid view. You can then use sorts and filters just like you usually would do using grid options menu if you want to review those that have an override noted. So the new column will be blank, or it will show a yes in the column if it's going to indicate that there's an eligible timeline override in the child maltreatment report. And remember, and I have a little screenshot there in there at the top in the right there. Remember, if there was a timeline override entered, it's entered where it says it's on the victim tab of the child maltreatment report. So if there was a timeline override entered there, then the required timeline hours column will show 120 rather than 24. And the timeline met column is going to appropriately now indicate if the timeline was met, even when there's an override. So we had to update this because previously it wasn't taken into account this new field and override option. So now the report should be accurate and you should be able to rely on that. Any questions?
We don't have any in the question and answer, so.
Thank you.
This is Molly. I just saw a question in the chat from Terry. If I get pulled away while doing a case note and SSIS shuts down, will I lose my case note or will it do a save?
So Terry, that's not a change. If you saved it before things have shut down, then it will be saved. If you haven't, then it won't be. So it's a good idea to, if you're pulled away, to save before you walk away. Or pick up that phone or whatever it may be. So that hasn't changed. you still want to make sure that you're saving things, often.
And one more question from Sarah Hacker. Will there be a way to potentially show if the case is closed in a timely manner within the 45 days?
So this report, I don't believe does that. The time to initial contact report looks at really the timeliness of the contact specifically. I don't believe that it actually looks at the 45 days piece. So if you want to send that into the help desk, I can take a look to see if there's any other option. I feel like I got this question recently at the help desk as well. And I don't believe we found anything that's easily found there. However, I believe you can look at the alerts and reminders for that. And supervisors can look at, anybody assigned to them and find, which things have been closed, which are not been closed, I should say, within the 45 days. So I think that you'll still see those. And I believe there's a report in general reports, but I'd have to take a look at that in general reports that actually will show you if things aren't closed timely. But I don't know that there's something that actually shows which ones are closed timely as well. It's just kind of a given that anything that is closed timely isn't on the report. But if you want to give me a little bit more detail about what you're looking for, maybe send that into the help desk and we can take a look further at that. I see Amy responded there. And yes, Amy, that's the one I was talking about. Thank you. I don't have it up in front of me, but that is the one where you can see if they're open after the 45 days. I think it was called the aging report. Yes, thank you.
One more question here, Marcia. If you change the font size in the editor, will the font size change only be for that contact note or for all contact notes?
I believe it's only for that contact note. All right, thank you. Back to you, Ross.
All right. Well, Ross Stack back again for the Children's Mental Health Update. I'm going to talk about the Children's Mental Health Screening and Assessment folder. So, child mental health screening. On the top of the screen, we have an image of the SSIS tree view with the expanded CMH screening and assessment folder displaying an arrow towards the new child mental health screen options. To access child mental health screen, you'll start with the client node, access the action menu, or expand the client's node, and right-click on the CMH screening and assessment folder. Click on the new child mental health screen option. The bulleted items display the following. A screen title was added. The slide shows a screen capture with an arrow pointing to the child mental health screening title. Once clicked, the hyperlink takes the user to help desk or to help text. The screen was revised to allow users to save updates without having to complete the required fields. Users will still receive a warning message indicating that the screen is incomplete, but the screen will still save. Let's go to questions in the Q&A.
I am not seeing any questions regarding the children's mental health screening or any other questions.
Okay. Our next section covers changes to documents functionality. Documents template search. We have a change to the document template search functionality. When a user goes to documents and then the document search screen, it will no longer have the big blue E on the page. The blue E is not needed for selections of a template, and this will prevent users from overriding a template. This slide contains an image of the document template search screen without the blue E. When a user goes to chronology and selects new documents, then clicks the search button, that looks like the magnifying glass, embedded in the document template field, the document search screen displays, allowing the user to search or use the tree view to select a template. Once the desired template is selected, it will no longer have the blue E on the page. Any questions?
Nope, we are still good.
All right. Let's move on to fiscal topics. Molly Kaler will be reviewing new updates, key proofing messages, and other fiscal updates.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ross. So there has been an update to a newly implemented proofing message 1287. The logic has been removed from claiming days 15 plus for specialized setting, sex trafficking, exploitation, and at risk, and pregnanting and parenting youth. This proofing message logic is still in place for QRTP and SIL's specialized settings. And then the next two proofing messages, 1288 and 1289, are new proofing messages to the Child Foster Care Report due to the Family First Prevention Services implementation. And I will just put a shameless plug out here. We will have many more proofing messages coming to the Foster Care Report. So if anyone is interested in piloting in October, we would greatly appreciate it. And you can just reach out to the SSIS help desk. That is all I have. Thank you. And I'll send it back to Ross.
Hi, Molly. Okay, I think it's me. I'll take over at this point.
Sorry, Renetta.
That's all right. We'll go ahead and just chat about a few things. We're going to cover during this section of the training some information on permanency, and then we'll look at some of the miscellaneous changes that occurred during this release. So as Ross said, all those additional release notes, right? His favorite part of release training. So we're going to start with the permanency folder. On the screen in front of you, we have an image of the permanency folder QRTP documentation slide. And I believe someone from our team has posted in the chat kind of like a jargon or acronym. So I will use a lot of acronyms during this section. And if you're not quite sure what I'm referring to, please feel free to take a look in the chat so that you will, you'll know. But most of you are already familiar with these acronyms, so we're just gonna roll with the punches. So this screen, the QRTP documentation slide here has an image of the client's node with the participants folder, QRTP documentation, and the family and permanency team folders expanded to display that new participants folder. And of course, we also see a red arrow pointing towards the action menu of the new participants folder, and it's pointing towards new team participants. And that's what we're going to focus on with this slide. So we want to make sure you are aware that you can now select a new team participant. I know there were some issues around this before, but that error has been fixed. So the way to do it, again, access the action menu and you will get to this new team participants option. Any questions?
Nope, no questions.
Yep,
Okay.
nothing in the Q&A either.
All right. Then I think everyone's waiting for this additional release notes, right? Well, we're going to cover a bunch of, well, I shouldn't say a bunch, there really aren't a lot for me to cover, but a few of the miscellaneous or various changes that happen in this release. So the first one we're going to take a look at, we have data cleanup errors. We've added 2 new parenting and pregnant youth or PPY data cleanup messages. When the expecting parenting youth, the EPY record is one, if that EPY record is not linked to the placement, you'll see an error that says placement with potential specialized setting certification is required and some additional text after that. And the other error is when the EPY record has no record linked. You will see the placement with the potential specialized setting certification has supporting documentation. And as usual, if there are no errors and you have correctly linked the PPY placement and EPY record, you're not going to see any data cleanup errors whatsoever. So the image on this next slide is just an image of the actual error messages. So I'm just going to keep us moving. And now we're going to talk about what happens if you get one of those 2 error messages. How do you clean it up? How do you fix it, right? So these next 4 slides will take you through the process of linking the placement and setting with the PPY or with the EPY record. So we're going to show you how to do that, take you through that process. The image that you have in front of you is a slide that shows the permanency, placement location, and absence folders placement tab. So this is typically that first tab on the screen. And what we have highlighted, we have the setting, reason, and potentialized specialized setting certification. So this particular screen, workers will complete the setting and reason and make sure you're selecting the appropriate ones for your expectant or pregnant youth. And then the potential specialized setting certification will autofill. So make sure you are completing this screen. So that's your first step. The second step is linking the placement and setting to the PPY is to access the client's placement location and absence folders action menu and select add existing expectant parenting link. So after you have selected the appropriate reason and setting, then you want to make sure you go back to the action menu, select the add existing parenting link. And we do have a screenshot that shows the action menu from the placement location and absences screen. So the third step in linking the placement and setting to the PPY record is to select the current expecting parenting youth or EPY record to document the youth is parenting 1 or more children or is pregnant. So on this add existing EPY link screen that is on the slide, we show you how to, or we show an image of the drop-down menu from the EPI field where you can select the appropriate record. The fourth step to completing the or linking the placement is to go back and verify that the placement has been linked. And to do that, you would access the permanency folder, expand the placement location and absences folder, go under the appropriate placement on your tree view, expand that folder, and you should see an EPY folder, and the folder will have the date that you actually linked the placement and setting record to the EPY record. So those 4 steps are what you'll need to do in order to make sure the placement and setting record for the PPY is linked to the EPY record. And that is important, especially if you don't want to have to go back and clean up data, clean up errors. Now, we will have more detail posted on our website at some point. There was an excellent training provided by Erica Jepson and some other folks at DHS. And that training was on PSA, and there is a PowerPoint that at some point will be posted here to our resource page. And we'll make sure there's a notation made in our SSIS update as to when you can locate that presentation and take a look at this whole linking process and in more detail. Any questions?
Nope, there's no questions yet.
Okay.
Thanks, Renata.
Okay, we're going to move on to the security section. And here we're going to take a look at password changes, right? So this, again, is not new. We've always recommended that folks create strong passwords, right? Now workers will get a friendly reminder indicating that they need to create a strong password that the Active Directory will accept. So keep in mind that passwords should contain at least 8 characters, at least one lowercase, uppercase digit, like a number, and or one of these specialized characters that are identified on the screen in the image that we have of the actual error message. So again, it's nothing new, but this time workers will absolutely get a message saying, hey, password's not strong enough. And I've received this message several times already, even though I think I get it, but it's good, you know, while we were piloting to kind of have this little reminder that, no, Renata, you got to do a little better. Any questions?
There are none in the Q&A.
Okay, well, moving on to one of everyone's favorite topics, service plans. Now that I got you all worked up and perked up and ready to see what we have going on with service plans, I'm going to have to tell you there's not a huge change in terms of we've got multiple things to tell you, but we do have one change that is going to impact whether or not workers are allowed to continue on and actually create the service plan. So on the screen in front of you, there is a screenshot of the out-of-home placement plan with the effective from date and effective to date fields noted, you know, that you need to have at least 150 days between the dates. That is what we have updated. And if your workers, or if you are not actually, if you don't actually have 150 days between the effective to date and the effective from date, you will not be allowed to move forward with creating the plan. So make sure you are taking a look at those dates if you get this, if you get an error message. Any questions? Anything in Q&A or chat? I'm not seeing anything.
Nope, not yet.
Okay,
Nope.
I will continue on to the statewide case access. So the change that we've made here is to that you will no longer see user ID equal null when you are in state detail. So if access was granted to a case or work group in another agency, you can now see the user's appropriate user ID. So that's the big change here. Any questions on statewide case access?
There's not a change on the statewide access, but we do have a question here from Terry Kuchheimer. Is that a change from 6 months now? Out-of-home placement plans will now be 150 days instead of 6 months. And no, Terry, that is the requirement for out-of-home placement plans is still 6 months. It's just that you used to be able to have a shorter date for the effective date, and now you have to have it at least 150 days. So the requirement is still that they're done, excuse me, every 6 months or when there is a placement change. So that requirement has not changed. And it needs to be that way, because I see we have a question from Joy about why does there need to be the 150 days? And it has something to do with the calculation of the independent living plan and how that is calculated and automatically shows up when a youth turns 14. So it has something to do with the calculation that it had to be at least 150 days. But there is no change in the time that the out-of-home placement plans have to be done.
And this is Marcia. Erica, I'm just going to add in there. Also, don't be confused. It doesn't mean that you can't go in and do a early review. So it's not stopping you from, hey, they changed placements, or we decided we needed to do a review in 3 months rather than 5 to 6, right? You can still go in and do those early reviews and then put in a new plan, which is going to now take over for the previous plan. So hopefully that makes sense.
Any other questions? Is there anything else? Do we have anything else in chat, Erica?
Nope, it looks like we're good.
Okay. So on that note, I am going to turn this over to Sarah Cont'd. Sarah will walk us through all of the adult protection changes in version 22.3. Go ahead and take it over, Sarah.
Hey there, folks. My name is Sarah Cont'd. I am not Ross Stack, although Ross is our MC today, and my name is showing as Ross. I'm Sarah. Welcome. Thank you again, Renetta. As we move into one of our final pieces in the morning, I want to thank you, our participants, for joining us. Thank you for making time in your day to learn with us. I know many of you have very busy schedules and you popped in with us today, so thank you. If you haven't done so already, do take a moment to pause and just write down one takeaway from this morning, or an item you may want to follow up with us about. I know sometimes you might have the question after the event, and that's okay. We have resources for you to connect with afterwards. Some of us process information differently. Make sure to reach out if you have those questions. I also want to thank the team joining me today presenting live, both on screen and behind the scenes. You know who you are. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to move us through the adult protection updates. As you have questions, I'm going to defer to our experts here. Renetta, Marcia, Erica, don't be afraid to jump in. I always need my co-trainers, hop right in. If we need follow-up, we'll let you all know. Our adult protection partners are ready and able to support you. All right, thanks for moving that slide forward, Renetta. She keeps me on track. First, we will review an update to the EPS email notifications fields. For this update, when you enter email addresses in the EPS notifications fields, the email address no longer clears when turning off the notification. This means if you shut off notifications on a Monday morning, on Friday, when you turn it back on, you will see all of the recipients' email addresses within the field again. Just a note, by way of background, county staff actually reached out to our adult protection policy team to request this change, really to avoid errors and re-entry of email addresses. So thank you if you were one of those folks for reaching out. Policy went ahead and partnered with our SSIS team in Minute to make this change. Thank you. Here, I want to show you an update to the Adult Maltreatment tab in the Adult Maltreatment Report screen. You'll notice that the Incident Facility Provider field was removed from the Adult Maltreatment Report tab. Just a note, I know there's a lot of visuals on this particular section of the presentation. Heidi Morris will be getting a set of PowerPoint slides out to you as soon as possible within 7 to 10 business days. Then you can zoom in. I also understand from my colleague, Marcia Riss, that there is a way to zoom in on the screen here in Zoom. Marcia, do you mind, or somebody from my team, putting those instructions in the chat quick just to how to zoom in?
Sure. Yep.
Us. Thank you. I just know that I can grab my mouse pad and stretch the screen. And I don't think that I have the same technical expertise to explain that as you have, Marcia. Thank you. All right, Renetta, let's go to slide 53. Thanks. Here you will find an update on the Victim Information tab on the AMR screen. This highlights the newly added VA provider name field. Here we're on our new Allegation tab updates. Note that, again, when we send you the PowerPoint, you'll be able to zoom in. I am going to just pause here for a moment if you want to zoom in on this particular PowerPoint slide. So here we have the Allegation tab on the Adult Maltreatment Report screen, highlighting the licensed service provider and facility provider fields that were added and displayed per resident versus resident question answers. All right, just quickly, printing the AMR is now completed via accessing the action menu while in the AMR and selecting print. Finally, I want to direct you to the adult protection specific resources we have here. First of all, we do have the adult protection module. That's something that the SSIS training team partners on updating with the SSIS AP policy team. It's a great resource. If you haven't done so already, try to favorite that page. I'm going to work in a moment to put that link in the chat for you, just so you have it handy, so you can grab that anytime you need it. I also want to make you aware that we soon will be advertising SSIS training sessions on adult protection SSIS. That will be forthcoming. That's a great opportunity to connect, polish up your skills. Maybe you are aware of a newer worker who would benefit from that training. That will be published soon. All right, let's move to questions.
Do not see any in the Q&A at the moment.
All right, Ross, the virtual floor is yours. I'm going to pass you the virtual mic.
Well, the real Ross Stack will stand up.
Please, Ross.
Sarah
Thank
had
you.
mentioned some resources that are available to you. So if you want to find more information to support your work, check out our version, and to check out the version 22.3 release notes on our SSIS County Link resource page. The link will be placed in the chat for those of you who want to view this right away. Otherwise, you can also go to Google and enter into the chat, or enter into the search County Link SSIS release notes. This is how many folks, including Sarah, finds this material. This slide shows an image of the SSIS resource page showing the general SSIS release information and release notes section on the page. This is what it looks like. The PowerPoint will eventually be posted here as well. What questions do you have about your resources? Okay, with that, I want to thank you all for coming, and let you know also that you can reach out to us by contacting the SSIS help desk and or the SSIS training team. Thanks again, everybody.